We begin tonight's big story with a big number, 120. That is the total number of towns and cities classified by the Philippine National Police as areas of concern this upcoming elections. We used to call them election hotspots. The PNP has identified 105 towns and 15 cities as areas of concern in the upcoming May polls. The list, which should have been released by the poll body last March, is still being verified by COMELEC. And it's time for today's biggest headlines. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. While the PNP has identified 120 areas of concern for the coming polls, the COMELEC assures that it will implement restrictions in these areas without disrupting local communities. Greg Gregorio with The Big Story.
Just a little over a month before the May 2022 polls, the Commission on Elections is now in the process of verifying election areas of concern and hotspots that have been identified by the Philippine National Police. In a joint press conference on Thursday, the PNP said it has classified 105 towns and 15 cities as areas of concern.
When our partners in the PNP give us a list of these places like yung 105 na sinasabi, that still undergoes validation on our end. As far as I know, hindi pa po completed yung validation natin.
Jimenez added that they hope to present the verified list as soon as possible. According to PNP Chief Leonardo Carlos, several factors were locked upon before placing an area under the red category.
We basically look at the historical data in the last two elections. Tapos yung presence ng possible threat groups or PAGs kung meron yan. And then the latest validation or situation on the ground.
COMELEC follows a color-coded system for classifying areas. When an area is tagged red or critical, it will be strictly monitored. Areas tagged as green, meanwhile, have no problem and show no cause for concern. Yellow means the area have a history of political unrest, while orange indicates such areas have armed groups. But while tighter security will be implemented in LGUs that will be classified as red areas of concern, Jimenez says the poll body will implement restrictions in these areas without disrupting local communities.
Sabi nga ni Commissioner George Garcia, we tend to use a light hand on this matter because we find it very disruptive to the local community kung bigla-bigla tayong papasok dyan at magdideklara tayo ng hotspot, no, or area of concern siya. So there is room for validation at this point.
For the PNP's part, Carlos said that they are continuously coordinating with the AFP, PCG, and on-ground COMELEC personnel to ensure coverage from the regional, provincial, to the city municipal level. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Which areas have been identified as election areas of concern? That big question and more with Police Lieutenant General Ferdinand Divina, the PNP's Deputy Chief for Operations and Head of Task Force for the 2022 elections. Good evening, Lieutenant General Divina, and welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening po, and good evening to all the viewers po.
Sir, as the COMELEC said, this is still being verified, this is still being vetted. Nonetheless, can you identify which areas are being identified as election areas of concern?
I can only share in the meantime the total number, and based on the recommendations of the PNP after careful deliberation and application of the risk factors, we have recommended to the COMELEC 105 towns and 15 cities nationwide to be considered as election areas of concerns. We are doing away with the term hotspots.
Okay.
We rather refer to it as election areas of concern for purposes of priority focused deployment by the Philippine National Police.
Okay. What are the factors? So what goes into considering an area as an area of concern?
The factors, nasabi na po kanina, the state of intense political rivalries, alam naman po natin, it's only 32 days, to be exact, 32 days before the May 9 elections. And pag-approaching na po yan, the rivalries, especially in hotly contested areas, becomes intense. Second po, the presence of private armed groups or potential private armed groups. Yung potential private armed groups, ito po yung validated criminal gangs na dahil wala nang magawa. In the meantime, it's more lucrative to engage in private armed armed groups or being hired for purposes of employment as private armed groups. The others are the presence of other armed groups such as the communist terrorist groups or other local terrorist groups, and we are referring to the armed men in some parts of Mindanao. Ito po yung what we refer to as risk factors po.
Okay, well, General Divina, you mentioned two things there in terms of armed groups. Criminal gangs, pagkatapos yung isa po, yung mga armed groups associated with communist movements and so on. What about private armies?
We refer to them as validated private armed groups. Of course, pag naubos na namin po ito, those listed as criminal gangs can be transformed as potential PUGs based on the promise of reward or money being given for purposes of employment as private armed groups. But we are closely monitoring this, both covertly and overtly.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Lieutenant General Ferdinand Divina. Meanwhile, the COMELEC has announced the temporary suspension of absentee voting in countries with war or facing a COVID-19 surge. Filipino voters in war-torn Afghanistan and Ukraine, for example, may not be able to cast their votes due to the mandatory repatriation in the area, while overseas voting capabilities remain limited in Iraq and Algeria. Overseas voting will also likely be suspended in Chad, Tunisia, and Libya, affecting a total of 127 voters in these countries. Meanwhile, overseas absentee voting has also been suspended in Shanghai, China, due to an indefinite lockdown in the area. Nearly 2,000 COMELEC registered voters are based in Shanghai. The month-long absentee voting period is set to begin on April 10. It will run until May 9. And these are the other big stories tonight. Although Vice President Leni Robredo is still a far second from arch-rival Bongbong Marcos in recent surveys, drone shots of massive kakampig rallies seem to be capturing voter support that go beyond survey numbers. Government is pushing more Filipinos to get their booster shots, warning that the efficacy of the initial vaccine series could wane by the second quarter. And in sports, the Creamline Cool Smashers is now just one win away from the Open Conference crown after outlasting the Petrogras Angels at the finals. These big stories after the break. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Drone shots in the campaign rallies of Vice President Leni Robredo has become a real game changer in the way voters are seeing her campaign. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro takes us behind the scenes and introduces us to the man behind the aerial footage.
Ito yung remote niya. So ngayon, start natin.
Ayan na siya.
Ang angat yan, dahan-dahan lang. Take off na tayo.
Yan.
Ayun.
Technology has grown leaps and bounds. Still, it takes a human touch to turn technology into inspiration.
So habang na-record mo siya, tingnan mo rin kung tama yung aperture mo. So yun, so kita, hi tayong dalawa.
Yan, hi tayo dalawa. Video na yan or
Video na yan, sir. Ayun.
This is Jimmy Dasal. He's the man behind the viral drone shots of the recent rallies of Vice President Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangilinan that have breathed new life and hope into their campaigns.
Pag sinabi natin, mahal natin
Alam mo yung gusto mo
mga
itong palabas. Kahit visual lang siya, kahit wala pang audio, maramdaman ng tao. Ganun pala karami.
Sino ba yung mga
Dahil kahit saan pumunta ang drone, Diyos ko po, hindi mahulugang karayom ang mga tao.
Dasal's drone shots of her huge rallies seem to have given her kakampings a shot in the arm that survey numbers don't always capture everything there is in a campaign. Attorney Joey Nudo was one of the organizers of the Pasig Laban rally for Robredo in Pasig City. It had the biggest turnout for her campaign rallies.
We didn't realize how big the event was when we saw the drone shots. How Emerald Avenue and peripheral roads were flooded with a sea of people wearing pink. That's when we realized we did something big here. While of course we do not discount the scientific and the statistical method employed in surveys, the truth behind it is that there is really a truth in what we see in rallies.
The aerial shots may be getting the desired effect. The campaign of Robredo and Pangilinan has gone into overdrive, with 10 provinces visited a week and volunteers doing house-to-house campaigns. Several local officials have also changed colors and joined the Robredo campaign. And in the most recent Pulse Asia survey, Robredo rose by 9 percentage points. But time is fast running out, with just a month before Election Day. Robredo's campaign has finally taken off. The question still is whether it will land her in Malacanang. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
National candidates are now intensifying their campaigns just a little more than a month before Election Day. Vice President Robredo has returned to Davao del Norte for a grand rally in Tagum, this time with the backing of Partido Reforma President Congressman Pantaleon Alvarez. Her running mate, Senator Kiko Pangilinan, is absent as Alvarez's party is still endorsing Tito Soto. Today, Senator Ping Lacson visited Bogo, Cebu, where he was warmly welcomed by residents. The city was one of the areas helped by Lacson when Typhoon Yolanda struck in 2013. In his visit, the senator reiterated the need to support MSMEs. He also echoed calls to exempt teachers' election honoraria from taxes. Meanwhile, Senator Manny Pacquiao's mother, Jonisha, has joined his campaign in Metro Manila. This was on Thursday. Despite her old age, Mommy D said that she will act as her son's advisor should he become president. Labor leader Leody de Guzman says he remains unaffected by the latest Pulse Asia survey, which showed that his voter share is still less than 1%. De Guzman said he will not withdraw from the race. Instead, the labor leader says his camp will double or triple their efforts to win more voters. For our big story in sports, the Creamline Cool Smashers drew first blood in the best-of-3 PVL Open Conference Finals against its rivals, the Petrogas Angels. The highlights of Game 1 in Gretchen Ho's report.
Syed, the veteran, emotional after the semifinal win. A rivalry was renewed on Wednesday. Familiar foes in the Petrogas Angels and the Creamline Cool Smashers were back at it.
Also. And contributing.
This time facing each other at the PBL Open Conference Finals. In front of more than 14,000 fans, both teams delivered a thrilling matchup. In the first set, the Cool Smashers went all out on their offense, thanks to the trio of Tots Carlos, Gemma Galanza, and Eliza Valdez. With the three very much in form, Creamline easily dominated the set, 25-16. But in the second set, the Angels managed to steady their offense and defense, courtesy of Gretzel Soltones and Myla Pablo.
12 more to say.
It seemed to be a back-and-forth affair between the two teams as, come the third set, it was Creamline who dominated once more, winning 25-12.
And Creamline will go up 2-1. Back to Eliza. Again. Back to Creamline. Eliza. Same strategy for Eliza Valdez.
The fourth set, though, proved to be an all-time classic as the Angels and Cool Smashers went at it and eventually reaching the 30-point mark. But in the end, it was Creamline that proved to be too much as they defeated Petrogas 32-30 to claim the first game of the series.
We're just really thankful for the win today, and we're just gonna sink it in today, pero tomorrow we have to prepare for the game on Friday.
Meanwhile, the Chocomucho Flying Titans are also one win away to claiming the bronze after defeating the Signal HD Spikers in 4 sets. Game 2 of the PBL Open Conference Finals is on Friday 6 p.m. and you can catch the action on One Sports, Signal Play, and the Smart Giga Play app. Gretchen Hall, We Are One News.
In the UAAP, the UP Fighting Maroons snatched solo second after a come-from-behind victory over the DLSU Green Archers 71-69. The Fighting Maroons overturned a 7-point deficit in the fourth quarter behind a flurry of baskets from Zab Lucero, who finished with a double-double of 21 points and 14 rebounds. UP improved to 5-1, while the Green Archers slid to 4-2 in the standings. Meanwhile, the NU Bulldogs bounced back after a close loss to Ateneo with an emphatic 82-51 win over the UST Growling Tigers. The Blue Eagles remain unbeaten following another tough victory over the UE Red Warriors 84-72. And in the last game of the evening, the FEU Tamaraws and the Adamson Soaring Falcons battled it out as both teams looked to gather momentum just before the end of the first round of the tournament. Time for another quick break. When we return, Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion is pushing to require proof of COVID-19 booster shots in establishments by June. And the central bank has unveiled the new 1,000 peso polymer bills produced in Australia. These big stories after the break. I'm Robbie Alampa. You're still watching The Big Story. With a 9-point jump in the latest Pulse Asia survey, it's been speculated that momentum may be starting for Vice President Leni Robredo's candidacy. But experts say it takes more than just additional survey points for her to take the lead. Camille Samonte with this report.
In the March survey of Pulse Asia, Leni Robredo jumped by 9 points. It is her biggest increase in this election season. Team Leni is naturally all fired up. Robredo's spokesman called it the turning of the tide. Pulse Asia's Ana Tabunda gives the good news and the not so good news for Leni campaign.
Nag-increase ang voter preference for Leni Robredo by 9 percentage points. Significant yon. Yung binaba ng voter preference ni Bongbong Marcos na 4 percentage points, hindi yun significant.
Not significant because the 4 points shed by BBM from February is within the margin of error of plus or minus 3%. Tabunda also has not so good news for Team BBM.
Significant yung pagbaba niya sa Class D lang. Hindi dun sa areas. Ngayon, if they want to maintain their large lead, well, they can be concerned. Pero as it is, malaki pa rin yung gap.
Pulse Asia President Ronald Holmes says the survey might not have yet reflected the impact of the real estate tax issue against Marcos.
Nangyari yung sa kalagitnaan ng aming fieldwork. Ibig sabihin, nangangalahati na kami at kung mag-resonate yun ay maaring matatagalan pa. It may not have resonated yet at the time that we were conducting the survey.
Despite this, BBM is still ahead by 32 points with less than a month before voting day. At around the same time during the 2016 elections, there was only a 5-point difference between the front-runner, Duterte, who scored 30%, and Grace Poe, 25%. Duterte went on to win with 39% of the votes. Tabunda says for the Team Leni to make the impossible more probable, she will need to gain 16 points in the next survey, and BBM has to lose 16 points. This 10-candidate election has, according to Abunda, became a two-way race between Marcos and Robredo. Tabunda says it will take a major development in the last weeks of the campaign to overtake the lead and really turn the tide in this election. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Meanwhile, from paper to polymer, Bangko Sentral has unveiled its new 1,000 peso bill, which now replaces the image of Filipino World War II heroes with the Philippine eagle. Mon Gualvez has the story.
The 1,000 peso bill just got a makeover. President Duterte formally presented the new banknote on Wednesday. In front is an image of the Philippine eagle and the Sampaguita seen on the side. At the back are images of Tubataha Reef's natural park, the South Sea Pearl, and the Tinalak Weave design. The previous design featured 3 World War II heroes, namely Jose Abad Santos, Vicente Lim, and Jose Fallanes Escoda. A descendant of one of the 3 heroes was dismayed by the changes.
Kakaunti na nga lang yung reminders natin about our heroes, and now you're taking out ubiquitous reminder of their legacy.
A historian also expressed concern over what the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas did.
It is government policy, but sometimes government policy should at least be tempered by what we know and what we honor and what we share in our history and culture.
The BSP explains that bills should be improved to comply with international standards.
The BSP periodically updates the material, design, and security features of our banknotes to prevent counterfeiting and be durable enough for longer-term use.
The central bank has also decided to shift from a paper bill to a polymer banknote. Based on studies, this type of banknote is more durable and can be sanitized since it is made of plastic. The BSP will start circulating the new 1,000 peso bill by April 18 through over-the-counter transactions in banks. The old one, though, can still be used for the time being. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.tv. PH. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe. Sa ngalan din po ni Gretchen Ho, ako po si Robbie Alampay. We are One News.